Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
Hello and welcome to this week's show. We are here in Colorado. We are actually getting ready to head out on the road again for a short little vacation. This is truly a vacation, so we will not be stopping and seeing people on the road. However, we will have shows each and every week. So, got a question for you. What is your thought on, can a new entrant take on an established market leader? Can a totally new entrant take on a well-established, dominant market leader? Or is that just a foolish attempt at vanity, thinking that you've got the better idea? Well, that is the topic for today's show. What does it take and how to think about being a challenger, an innovation challenger? But before we jump in, got a favor to ask. Can you like, share, and follow today's show? Can you like us wherever you see this, wherever you're listening to the show? Can you go ahead and just give us a quick like? Also, share with others. Share with people in your social media network, people at work. We would greatly appreciate that. And if you don't already follow us, follow us. Follow me over on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, pretty much every social media platform that's out there. And I do want to give a quick shout out to Chris Woodruff. Chris, I noticed, has been sharing some of the shows that he's really and particularly liked on his social media platform. So Chris, I greatly do appreciate that support. Chris has been actually a very, very, very long-term listener. And in fact, was one of the first listeners who actually reached out to me and asked permission to come visit with me at the HP headquarters way, 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 way back. And I hosted him at Hewlett Packard, gave him a tour, and he got to see and meet some of my teams there. So, Chris, thanks for the continued support, and thanks for the sharing of the content on your social media. Now, with that housekeeping behind us, let's jump in to today's show. Many would question an innovator's strategy to go after established market leaders. However, human progress would be in the dark ages without those who are willing to challenge the status quo, to go after the dominant players. So what does it mean to be a challenger? It's the ultimate David and Goliath. The person that everybody just assumes is going to win. They're going to be the market leaders. They already are. They have such dominant share. Nobody is going to catch up with them. And the Davids, those that kind of ignore the old rules, ignore the ways people thought, don't let others convey to them or give them a defeatist attitude, and they go in anyways. And as we know in the David and Goliath story, what happened? David won. You need to think differently to overtake a much larger and well-established market leader. David did not go in with the normal weapons of the day, a shield, a sword. He was far too small. He had to come at the problem differently. So rather than accepting the market and industry norms, challengers have to fight smarter. They have to fight with focus. They have to have a clear purpose that they and their team has fully embraced. Being a challenger is a mindset as much as anything else, and it turns into being a way of life. And history is full of these David and Goliath stories, the innovation challengers that came in and upset the entire structures of industries. One of the most prominent ones that we all are very familiar with is Google. Now keep in mind, Google was not the first search engine. We had a bunch of different ones, Ask Jeeves, and we had Yahoo and others that were, and Yahoo at the time was the big gorilla. It had 95+% of the market share. And when Google came in, they were far behind the others. The others that had been around for years, we had well-established relationships. They had marketing agreements with a number of the leading brands. They were the big player. And Google felt that they had to come in with a better way, a smarter way, an automated way. And the key for Google's success was in the page rank algorithm, looking at how many pages refer to a page, how many times content on a page was referenced by others across the web, using that as kind of a vote of confidence on that page allowed for page ranking. Those that were the most popular pages automatically floated to the top. And people found that to be very, very compelling. Now, when Google started out, they were not the dominant player, but they stayed focused. They knew what their purpose was. They turned it into literally the David and Goliath, coming at it every which way they can. Now let's fast forward to today, and where is Google? Today, as of June of 2021, Google holds 92.47% market share. Don't ask me how to get to those kinds of accuracies. I'm just taking the stats off of one of the more prominent web sites that create stats of these kinds of technologies. But as of June of 2021, Google had more than 92% market share. So they were the David that has now become the Goliath. Does that mean that that's it? Search engine's over? No, I think there might be actually another new David out there that is going to take on that Goliath with even a better approach to search than what Google has. Just because you have dominant market share, or someone has dominant market share, it does not mean they cannot be challenged. Now, another one would be SpaceX. Now, space exploration, rocket launches, sending astronauts up in space used to be pretty much the dominant position of governments. US government, Russian government, the Chinese got into it, others got into it, but it's pretty much required big, massive amount of investments, required support of taxpayers and government funding to make these programs work. Now, in the past, in the case of the US, most of that was done through government defense contractors, and etc. And they controlled all the rocket launches. They controlled everything going up into space. And in fact, in 2006, there was a joint venture that was created called ULA, United Launch Alliance. And that's a joint venture between Lockheed Martin and Boeing Defense. Now, in 2006, SpaceX actually challenged that. They actually went to the Federal Trade Commission saying, why should these guys have a monopoly on space launches? It should be opened up to everybody. Big, big, big battle, on and on and on. And lo and behold, SpaceX came into existence. SpaceX actually did the work necessary to be successful. And just to put it in context, in 2008, when SpaceX put its first rocket up, their market share was 1.5%. 1.5% of all rocket launches in 2008. In 2020, SpaceX put up almost 22% of all launches. And if you think about it as just U.S. human launch, astronaut launches to the space station, SpaceX has what? 100% of that market share. So something that had been dominant since the 1950s, controlled by the government, and then was kind of moved over into this joint venture called United Launch Alliance. And in 2006, all of a sudden now you have a new entrant come in with a completely different approach, right? So what does SpaceX do that's differently? It's reuse of vehicles. It puts a rocket up, that rocket then lands onto one of its drone pads. It recovers the rocket, can repurpose that, and use it for an upcoming launch, saving millions upon millions of dollars of cost. And those savings then get translated back into its ability to be able to afford to do more launches. Ultimately, what SpaceX has done is they've radically reduced the cost per pound to put items into space, whether that be supplies to the space station, astronauts, or Starlink satellites and other satellite deliveries now that they have done. So, two examples of where somebody else was the Goliath and two companies, Google and SpaceX, were the Davids. Both of them now, you could argue, are Goliaths. Does that mean that there could be other Davids coming along to dislodge them? Yes. Innovation Challengers has had a long history. Challengers that are willing to go after those Goliaths with new ideas, new approaches, and new ways to think about those kinds of things. So the question you really have to ask yourself is so how do you establish a challenger mindset? How do you create the mindset in your head right now to be that innovation challenger? I'm going to share with you my thoughts on this. Now, I've been in some industries going against the Goliaths, and in some cases, I was the Goliath that others were coming after. So this takes into account kind of both sides of the coin, I hope. But I would be interested in hearing your thoughts. Are there other items that a challenger needs to be thinking about from a mindset, from a culture, from how they organize? Would love to hear your thoughts. So, here are my thoughts on how do you establish a challenger mindset. Number one is you need to deeply understand the market leader. You need to understand the Goliath. Now, this does not mean just reading market studies, market research, the latest Forbes article, do a little Google search and think you know them. You do not. You need to go beyond. You need to get the true sense of that market leader, that person, their culture, their organization, the long history of their leaders, who plays key roles within the organization, who are the key inside influences, who from the outside influences them, who is their board, who are their investors, what history have they operated together, how engaged are their leaders. Some leaders, after they get to a certain size, the top leaders start pulling back a little bit. So you need to understand. You can't read this from just reading a book or searching Google or reading a market research study. You need to deeply understand the market leader. And if possible, buy and use their products. I used to do this all the time when I was the CTO at Hewlett Packard. I would buy all the competitors' products. And in fact, I would buy HP products through normal sales channels. My kids never got a laptop that came through some internal processor or structure or even employee purchasing at HP. A lot of employees, you can buy a laptop for your kids and your spouse and that through an employee purchase program, and you get a discount, and there's a special channel you order. And I said, no. I wanted myself, my wife, all of my kids, we purchased the products in retail. I had one, my oldest daughter did her graduate degree at Indiana University in Pennsylvania. My middle daughter did her master's degree at Marymount University in Northern Virginia, D.C., and my son did his undergrad at Cal State Fullerton. Each one of them, I sent them to local retail to buy their computers, whatever they needed, printers, ink, whatever. But the requirement is they had to send me a note on what the experience was like, right? So buy the product, buy and use your own product, but also buy and use your competitor's product. Consume the Goliaths marketing and social media content. Follow them on social media. Sign up for all their newsletters. See what they're saying. See how they're positioning themselves. Anonymously call their support lines. Find out, and ask for support and see how that experience gets. Engage with their sales channel. Buy through their sales channel. I used to do this. I would buy, Dell laptops or, there for a while. Even bought Gateway. And I've bought many times Apple. Use all of this to identify the opportunities. Look at all of this. Whether you buy your own products, buy your competitors' products, engage with their social media, understand their leadership, see what their product roadmaps are like, Use all of this to identify opportunities where you could be better than them. Look for those unmet needs. That's the key. Unmet needs. Find a way to change the game. Change the game to your advantage. So that's number one. Deeply understand the market leaders. Number two, accept all negative feedback as opportunities. Do not rationalize away, oh, someone complained about your idea or your product or whatever, and oh, they don't understand. They're not technically strong enough to understand how ours is better. Don't rationalize. Accept all negative feedback as opportunities. Opportunities to differentiate, opportunities to make you better. Practice active listening. Don't talk, listen. Active listening. And then address the feedback. If it's negative feedback, if you're already in the market and you've got products and services you're shipping and you get that negative feedback, if you're going to be the challenger, if you're going to want to go win and be the dominant player, if you're going to want to out-innovate your competitors, you need to address all that feedback. You need to iterate quickly. Great example, Zoom. Early in COVID, what happened? Everybody and their uncle came out guns blazing after Zoom. Really, it was initiated by Zoom's competitors because all of a sudden Zoom took off like a rocket at the beginning of COVID. But what did Zoom do that was so great? They reacted. They responded. Eric Ewing, who I know personally, I count him as a friend, stepped up and said, hey, we are not perfect. We may have gotten some of this wrong, and we're going to work hard at it, and we're going to keep you in the loop. And I am going to take, and they did a regular series of Zoom meetings inviting anybody and everybody to hop on and ask them questions, give them feedback, collect those thoughts. So look for and address the feedback. Negative feedback, treat it as opportunities. And then engage with those, like Eric did, was open it up so that he could take those meetings, take those calls, and then respond. And that's what Zoom did so well and what has made Zoom such a success today. Number three, look for parallel other disruptors. Don't always just look within your industry. Don't just look at the other players in your market. Look for other industries, other parallel industries, industries that maybe have maybe a similar structure, maybe a completely different structure. But look for those disruptors in those other industries and see if there's a way for you to apply it against the Goliath in your industry. Don't focus just on your industry. Don't put those blinders on. Look at those disruptors and challengers and look in a wide range of industries. You'd be surprised at ideas that you can take from something that would be totally unrelated to you that you could then turn into market success. And then to ask yourself, how could you apply that disruption that they've done to your industry? You look at Google. We talked about Google search. Well, Google used technology. It automated the process of scanning web pages and looking at links and keeping track of all the backlinks, links to pages, and then scoring through an algorithm, page ranks. The value of this page is more than the value of this page. So therefore, when someone searches for it, we're going to put it at the top of the page rank. Same thing with SpaceX. It challenged the industry assumption. The industry assumption is you shot a rocket up, all of the componentry eventually burned up coming back down, or you threw it out into the ocean and then ground it up, cut it up, whatever you did with it. But that was the end of it. SpaceX said, no, we can reuse these parts. We'll put them up, we'll land them back down on Earth, we'll reuse those multiple times. And I think now they've got some rockets that they've used 8, 9, 10 times in a row. So therefore, your cost per launch is 1/10 the cost of anybody else who you're trying to compete against. Challenging industry assumptions. 2 examples: SpaceX, use of technology, and Google, and SpaceX, challenging the industry assumption. So again, number 3 was look at parallel disruptors from other industries. Look at other industries who have disruptions that you can apply to your areas. And number 4, build an innovation red team. If you're going to be an innovation challenger, you got to recognize that you got a blind spot, and how are you going to deal with that blind spot? So what do I mean by an innovation red team? An innovation red team, they're a team of outsiders, critics, creatives, and they ask questions. They challenge your assumptions. They push you out of your comfort zone. You're bringing them in. Now, sometimes you do this by, friends and past coworkers or whatever, but be careful, because in many cases, people will just say things because they want to be nice. These are not people you want to be nice. You want these people to be brutally, brutally honest with you. So I would encourage you, hire them. Maybe not as employees, but maybe as outside consultants or outside experts. Pay them per meeting you host where you present an idea and then you cut them loose to rip you to shreds. They question everything. They push you out of your comfort zone. They point out your blind spots. And look, we all have blind spots. I've been in the innovation game now 40 years. 40, it's hard to imagine, 40 years, right? I have blind spots. I have people on my staff just this last week point out blind spots in a conversation we were having about innovation frameworks and innovation methodologies. And you would think, I've written the book, I speak publicly, I'm well known for this, right? I even have the blind spots. You need people around you. You need to recruit this innovation red team that's going to challenge your ideas. And you need to invite them. You need to give them permission to review your strategic plans and your innovation and product roadmaps and be honest, right? Now, it can be a little depressing. It can be brutal, but you need someone that's going to challenge you. Now, you can work through all those pieces, and if you can address all those critiques, you're going to be much, much better off. And you need to set it up as a regular process. This is not a one and done thing. You need to do it as a regular. And in my case, I was brought in, the first kind of this role that I played was at Roche, the medical device company, Roche, what's called Roche Diagnostics, which is a subsidiary of Roche. And Roche Diagnostics are the inventors of Accu-Chek. So if you are type 1 or type 2 diabetic or other medical conditions which require some form of testing of blood. So a little finger prick, put it on a little test strip, you get a little reading out that tells you good, bad, indifferent. I was brought in as the first and only outsider onto the Roche Diagnostics Innovation Board. This board not only approved ideas being presented and proposed by the Roche staff, but it was also to keep track of all the existing projects that they had going on. And it was quite eye-opening, right? I was the CTO at Hewlett-Packard at the time. At the time, the person leading the innovation effort at Roche Diagnostics was a listener of this podcast and had reached out to me. And I said, yeah, sure, I'd be more than willing to help, thinking that it was going to be like a 6-month little thing, help them get it organized, set up the governance structure, etc. And then they asked me to sit on the board for a little while, and I did. And it turned into, like a 2.5, 3-year effort, and I loved it. It was great just from the standpoint of being involved in other organizations' innovation efforts. I think we came up with better projects, better products, better solutions than just doing this as an internal. And this was kind of that convincing point about establishing an innovation red team, having other people from the outside, not part of your political structure, not part of your culture, people completely from the outside that are highly skilled in innovation, creativity, idea generation, expertise, etc., inviting them to come in and support your efforts. And then last is experimentation. Encourage your team to try something. If you're going to be an innovation challenger, you have to be willing to experiment. You have to set up that hypothesis, that experiment, so it's a learning loop. It's constantly in this feedback loop. If you don't encourage this experimentation, then what? It's just one thing you're going to go do and try? No. It is about a lot of experimentations. You set up a lot of hypotheses, you run that experiment, and then you try it. And look, in the case of experimentation, you need a culture that says failure is not bad. Failure is not a negative. It is learning. It is learning. So you need to, if you do an experiment, you share the results, you adjust it, you run that experiment again. You cannot just pick one approach that's going to win, that's going to allow you to go from being the David to then being the Goliath. It's going to take multiple approaches to get there, and you have to be willing to experiment and recognize that some of those experiments may not pan out. So, hopefully this gives you some sense and feel about what does it take to create a mindset to be an innovation challenger. Now, progress comes from those innovations who are willing to be challengers. If you're just willing to accept that, so-and-so's the Goliath and they're the Goliath and, we're just going to nibble here at the edges with our little corner cases or whatever, that's where you're going to stick. But nobody wants to stay there. If you're an innovator, you want to see your idea, your innovation, your thing become and have its impact that it can on people's lives. Think where we would be today if Henry Ford, nobody challenged the early automobile industry. Henry Ford did not invent automobiles. There were already automobile manufacturers out there, very, very expensive, only for the very, very rich, not for the common person. Henry Ford challenged the Goliath as the David and became the Goliath, right? So think about all the things through life, all the things we take for granted now, all as a result of an innovation challenger. A David willing to look at the opportunity completely differently and challenge the dominant player, the Goliath, and then won. And it's had an impact on your life, your family's lives, your employer's life, the company you own, structure. So as an innovator, you need to be willing to be that innovation challenger. So my question I have for you is who are you going to challenge for innovation success? So what is the first step you're going to take to establish your innovation challenger mindset? Are you going to dig deep on competition? Are you going to take negative feedback honestly and treat it as an opportunity? Are you going to look outside of your industry to other disruptions that you can potentially bring to go from being a David to being the Goliath? Are you going to establish an innovation red team? Are you going to create a culture of experiment? What is it you are going to do? It's not somebody else's job. It is your job. What is it you are going to do? Pick one and start on it today, right now. Start on it. Thanks for your time today. I greatly do appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to listen to the show. Thank you for all the feedback. Some of you have been sending in. I do appreciate it. Why don't you send me some feedback? Just drop me an email, phil@killerinnovations.com. That comes directly to me. I will be heading out on family vacation, so I may not be as responsive as I normally am, but go ahead and drop me an email. Can you also help me out? Can you help me pay it forward? We started this podcast back in March of 2005. Yes, 2005. And the reason we started it was Bob Davis, my mentor, said there was no way I could pay him back. I had to pay it forward. And this podcast got started as a way for me to pay it forward, to share my experiences, my lessons learned, my career history with as many people as possible so that they can, one, learn, but also avoid the same traps, pitfalls, stumbles that I have done over my career. So help me pay it forward by telling others. Tell others, share with others the show so that they can get the benefit of why you listen to it. And again, thanks for the time out of your busy schedule. Time is the most valuable asset any of us have. There's just not enough of it with family, work, our own personal interests. But you chose to spend that time with me, and I do greatly, greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a great week. Work on your innovations and go out and change the world. Bye-bye.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, this has been the Killer Innovation Show on the Innovators Network.